Most PTSD treatments are focused on managing symptoms through medication or other treatments. But what if there was a way to address some of the underlying issues, particularly the chronic inflammation and the neurological changes that occur from a result of PTSD? If you or someone you love is struggling with PTSD and you're looking for some approaches beyond the traditional treatments, you may be wondering if hyperbaric oxygen can help. And in today's dive, that's what we're going to be talking about. So let's first talk about what PTSD is, post-traumatic stress disorder. What does that really mean? It means there's a significantly heightened stress response following some type of stressful and traumatic experience. The intensity and the severity of the PTSD would vary person to person and from one experience to another. But this is not just an emotional experience. There are significant and measurable changes in the neurological system, the immune system, as well as the metabolic and endocrine systems. At its core, it's essentially an inability for the nervous system to come back down to a baseline level of balance following that stressful and traumatic experience. Inside the nervous system, specifically, this dysregulation occurs mostly in the autonomic nervous system, which can be broken into two parts, the sympathetic system and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic side is your fight or flight side. It's your stress responses. The parasympathetic is your rest and digest side. It's where healing, digestion, sleep, and repair all occur. I would say the overwhelming majority of us living on planet Earth today live in a more sympathetic dominant world, meaning the stress or the fight or flight response is much heavier than the parasympathetic response. It would be called increased sympathetic tone. In an ideal world, we would live right in the middle of both of those systems. And if we were exposed to some type of stress or threat, our body would move into sympathetic dominance. We would mobilize and get through that stressful moment, and then we would come back to baseline. And then it might be time to eat a meal. So we would go back into parasympathetics, digest that meal, come back to baseline. And then another threat pushes us back into sympathetics, back to baseline, and now it's time for bed. So we go back into parasympathetics and then back to baseline. And being able to transition between those phases is critically important for healthy and optimum nervous system function. PTSD is often associated with a hypervigilant sympathetic dominance, far more than what I was describing a typical person may be experiencing. So much so that they can't find their way back to baseline, let alone into parasympathetics. Living in this extremely heightened sympathetic state leads to a breakdown of so many of our other systems. The fight or flight system is designed to protect us from a threat. And since you cannot live in both your sympathetic and your parasympathetics at the same time, that sympathetic dominance leads to major losses on the parasympathetic side. These people often have issues digesting their food. These people often have terrible sleep, even potentially insomnia. Their entire rest and digest, repair and heal systems are compromised because they're always running away from the threat, even when the threat isn't present. So let's talk a little bit more about the physiology of living in such a sympathetic dominant life. Our entire hormonal system, our endocrine system, is going to be geared towards fighting or running away from this threat. A lot of adrenaline, noradrenaline, epinephrine are going to be released. High levels of cortisol are going to be chronically released. As a result, we may see decreases in testosterone. We may see decreases in thyroid hormone function because the body cannot be maintaining all of its hormonal balance when you're constantly running away from that threat. Let's talk about cognitive function. The body will turn down short-term memory and learning when it's faced with a threat. As a result, we're going to see brain fog in these patients. We're going to see memory loss in these patients. We're going to see difficulty concentrating and focusing, again, because they're so sympathetic dominant. We're likely going to see digestive issues, gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, a range of different GI disruption as a result of that sympathetic dominance. We're going to see high levels of anxiety and or depression in a lot of these patients. The entire cascade of neurotransmitter balance is also going to be skewed towards that sympathetic dominance. Without proper sleep, we're going to see extreme fatigue. We're also going to see a decrease in their ability to recover and repair. We're also going to see a decrease in their cognitive function simply because of the loss of sleep that a lot of these patients are getting. So where is it exactly that hyperbaric oxygen may help these people? First and foremost, we see that hyperbaric helps to balance the autonomic nervous system. We see this in a range of other conditions like complex regional pain syndrome, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and in pain associated with central sensitization, where the pain pathways are so heavily lit up that even small amounts of pain register as extreme pain once the brain has a chance to interpret those signals. So we know that hyperbaric helps to balance the sympathetic and parasympathetic arms of the nervous system. We see it reducing sympathetic tone. We see it increasing parasympathetic tone. As a result of increasing parasympathetic tone, we start to see improvement in these patients' GI symptoms, better digestion, less irritability, less bloating, less gas, less constipation, less diarrhea. As a result of stimulating parasympathetic tone, we see it improve sleep. In fact, almost all patients, PTSD, anxiety, or not, most patients utilizing hyperbaric will see improved sleep as one of the first indications that something is changing inside their body. A lot of that has to do with the parasympathetic tone that hyperbaric seems to support so well. As we drive more oxygen into the brain, we're going to start to see a balancing of the neurotransmitters. We're going to see a reduction in the neuroinflammation that persists in so many of the patients suffering from PTSD. We're going to see improved memory and improved cognitive performance across the board in almost all of these patients with PTSD, even when that PTSD is associated with TBI. There have been a number of studies on hyperbaric's impact on patients with PTSD. I'm pulling one in particular from February 2022. We will get right back to that video, but real quick, there are a number of rules and regulations and best practices that you need to know in order to be safe and compliant and run your practice accordingly. If you're not sure that you've got all your bases covered, we've created a free checklist for you that maps out everything that you need to become compliant inside the hyperbaric industry. You can grab that checklist for free by clicking the link in the description below. And now back to our video. Again, this was a veteran study. In this study, 35 veterans were randomized, half into a HBOT treatment group and half into the control group. Inside this study, they were doing images for brain microstructure, as well as a number of different outcome assessment tools looking at quality of life, memory, and overall function. Across the board, the treatment group had improvements in all of the above. Measurable changes in brain microstructure, improvements in quality of life, improvements in overall function, and statistically significant improvements in memory. We know that hyperbaric oxygen stimulates neuroplasticity. And when you have a serious and significant imbalance in the nervous system, whether it's in the autonomic nervous system or elsewhere, neuroplasticity is the only way to move through that for long-lasting and meaningful impact. Hyperbaric's ability to reduce sympathetic tone and increase parasympathetic tone, help to create balancing of the hormones, help to create balancing of the neurotransmitters, reducing inflammation, and stimulating that neuroplastic change is, in many cases, going to offer the results that so many of these patients are looking for. As with almost any indication that we talk about on this channel, it is not a cure or the treatment for PTSD, but at the same time, supports people struggling with PTSD and will help to create the changes that people are looking for. If you're considering hyperbaric for PTSD, or you know somebody looking for hyperbarics for PTSD, just make sure that you're working with somebody who's very familiar with the research supporting the usage of hyperbarics in PTSD in order to make sure that you're getting the safest and most appropriate and most effective protocol using hyperbarics in order to get the relief that you're looking for. Hopefully this video has helped you understand the connection between why hyperbaric may be very helpful in supporting folks suffering from PTSD. I appreciate your time and attention. Thanks for diving with me today, and I'll see you on the next video.